My name is Nina Lovejoy. I'm the Employment Services Program Manager here at MiraCosta, and I'm joined by colleagues both from the Career Center as well as Human Resources and Financial Aid. And we're here to tell you a little bit more about what's called the Learning Aligned Employment Program, or LAEP for short. So first off, LAEP is a project. Really, it's from the Department of let me advance my slides. There we go. It's funded through the California Student Aid Commission, which is the sort of the equivalent or counterpart of the United States federal government Department of Education funding for federal work study and FAFSA, but it's a California funded program. So it's California's aid program. And they really kind of designed it so that it might help students get employment ready, if you will. So there's a couple of kind of key criteria that we wanted to sort of share. First of all, positions that students can have for LAEP have to be research-based. So we want that's the learning alignment portion of LAEP. So making sure that the research project or undertaking aligns with what the student is ultimately studying. Students have the opportunity to earn in on-campus positions $16 to $22 an hour, and that's based on their unit completion, and we'll talk more about that. But in terms of your opportunity, think as a department or a program about projects or research questions that your department would like to explore. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of prior to starting. So in thinking about a LAEP research project, we'd like you to have a conversation within your department, talk to your supervisor or your dean, and think about how you might cover the very small cost. So that $16 to $22 an hour is covered through, the wage part is covered through the students' this large grant and the student's aid, but there is about a 1%, a little less than 1% cost that covers the student's benefits, workman's comp, things of that nature. So you have to kind of figure out where that 1% comes from, but it's a pretty small amount in the big picture of things. Also think about what the student's career or learning outcomes will be. So making sure that it is learning aligned. And one of the key components is to think about aligning it with what the student might do upon completion of the project and how that equates to a potential employment situation. And once it's approved, pretty straightforward, you'll create a job description for your student's position. You'll post it in Jane, our job and internship network, and others on the call will talk a little bit more about that. You'll have an open recruitment for students to have the ability to apply to the position. We, on the flip side of that, will assess the student's eligibility. And there are a lot of requirements that Rachel will go into in terms of making sure the student is eligible. But it's kind of a multi-part process, as we'll talk about. For timing, in terms of fall, we'd like you to kind of think about students being identified in the next few weeks. I know we said mid-September, but really we're aligning this, and Mike Green will talk more about it, with the internship course requirements, and mid-October is kind of the time frame in which those students would begin that internship piece. So we want to make sure that you kind of have your ducks in a row for fall in the next couple of weeks, basically, to give them a clean start in October. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Viviana Rodriguez, who's going to talk a little bit about LAEP and the supervisor aspect.
Yeah, so if you have supervised students in the past, you should be familiar with the supervisor manual. And anytime there are updates to policies or procedures, the manual is revised. And most recently, the most recent revisions do include LAEP information. So you can find this information in the supervisor manual, as well as the change that Nina mentioned earlier when it comes to posting your positions on Jane. So you should, as she mentioned, consult with your dean or supervisor before posting in Jane, just to ensure everyone is aware of your recruitment and everyone's on board. So there are two types of LAEP positions. One is internal, the other is external. So for the internal research placement, the LAEP student research intern will earn anywhere between $16 to $22 per hour, and this internal pay scale is based on completed units. And then we have the external placements. So these companies have an agreement with MiraCosta, and they have an agreement to have a portion of the students' wages paid through their financial aid, which will be covered later on as well. MiraCosta will reimburse the employer based on hours worked. This will be piloted this fall 2023 semester and will be more widely available in the spring semester. We do have an interest form, so interested students should complete the interest form, which can be found on the Career Center website under student employment and internships.
Thanks, Viviana. We'll pass it over to Rachel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Garcia. Pronouns are she, her, and I'm a financial aid advisor here in the financial aid office. And pretty much our piece when it comes to LAEP is determining eligibility using these eligibility requirements, as well as facilitating the awarding of the LAEP funds for the student once they are offered a position. So pretty much what happens, like Viviana said, students submit an interest form. Once we receive in the financial aid office that interest form, I take a look at the eligibility requirements to determine if that student is eligible. So I'll do these very quickly. We have to determine if the student is an underrepresented student. There's a little asterisk there because there are some options on the form where the student can self-identify if they fit into one of the definitions that delineates being an underrepresented student. Those include a student being a first-generation college student, a student who has low income, or a student who is a former foster youth, anyone who has experienced homelessness or at risk of being homeless, and students with disabilities, any students who are displaced workers, or those who have dependent children. Additionally, students who are formerly incarcerated, as well as any undocumented students or students meeting the requirements of AB 540. As well as students who are veterans. So those options are on the form for the student to self-identify, and all but the students who are first-generation college students, we can see that on a student's FAFSA or their DREAM Act application. So that is something that will show up on their financial aid application. Additionally, a student must be eligible to work in the United States, as well as be enrolled in at least 6 units in an eligible degree or certificate program. They should also be a California resident, as well as be meeting their satisfactory academic progress requirements. And finally, demonstrate financial need, which can be determined using their financial aid application. So again, I'll be reviewing these student interest forms to determine eligibility. And it goes through like a workflow. As soon as eligibility is confirmed, then the student is able to progress throughout the process, and it triggers next steps. The goal in the future is to automate the packaging process so that an award is automatically placed on a student's financial aid account based off of their estimated eligibility. And that way we can really try to market this and get more students aware of that this is a possibility for them. And it can show up on their award panel as an estimated award and hopefully trigger more interest for students to participate in the future. And then also we participate through Workday and ensure that students are hired properly when there are those internal placements, and ensure that the funding codes are correct and in alignment. So that's our piece.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm going to pitch it over to Holly, who's going to talk a little bit about the HR part.
Hi, everyone. My name is Holly Walker, and I'm a senior human resources technician. And one of my job duties is processing student worker staffing transaction in Workday. One great thing about the LAEP program is that it's already fully integrated into Workday, meaning that when you are ready to hire a LAEP intern or add a LAEP intern position to an existing employee's profile, you can do so in Workday, and you don't have to submit a personnel requisition or anything like that. The process for initiating the request is going to follow mostly the same steps as other student worker job profiles. I've linked one of the job aids here, but depending on whether this person is a brand new hire or an existing employee, you're going to submit an ad job or a hire transaction. And like I said, the steps are pretty much identical with two kind of major differences. The first one is that when you get here to the job details screen, you're going to want to select the job profile for student worker LAEP research intern. So that's kind of new. And then once you do that, it's going to launch this questionnaire at the bottom that asks for how many units that the person has completed as to that date. And that is how I'm going to determine where they are placed in terms of salary.
All right. So after the student gets onboarded, the next step is for them to enroll into a 292 or 299 class within their area of their major. So every 292, 299 class, if you're not familiar, has three different pillars. One is the student intern themselves, the faculty mentor or instructor of record, and then the supervisor. So since we're mainly focusing on the internal LAEP interns within MiraCosta right now, everyone in each of the pillars will be MiraCosta affiliated. So the student has to report their internship on Jane, so that way I have all the information to create the class. The 292 and 298 class they're created individually on a case-by-case basis per student request. So that's what initiates that whole piece, is the reporting it in Jane. So you might place the job into Jane, and the student applies to that, but then the student has to log back into Jane and to let us know they have received the position. Once I have that class created, the student can enroll in the class. There are assignments and required paperwork through the state of California that they'll be responsible for completing. This process also helps formalize the research project that Nina talked about before. They also get an evaluation on how well they performed as an intern, and they receive a letter grade. The faculty mentor roles, they have to work in partnership within other faculty in the discipline, because typically the supervisor will either be a classified staff member or it'll be another faculty member. And so a lot of times we'll see faculty members pair up. So let's say if you were doing some sort of research project in biology, then you would have potentially two biology faculty involved here, one as the faculty mentor and one as a supervisor. That's just one example. They are the faculty mentors, the teacher of record for the 292. To become a faculty mentor and teacher of record, you have to have approval from the chair and dean that oversees that area. We do have many faculty that are already pre-approved, so we can work with you on that. Or if we want to get new faculty approved, we can do that as well. The faculty mentor also facilitates the course in Canvas. We do have a Canvas shell that's already created. We have a standard syllabus that is used for these classes. Donna Davis is the chair of all of these classes, even though they may fall underneath like a different discipline. Using the same example, it would be a bio 292, but it would still be under Donna Davis's purview. The faculty mentor attends the site visit with the supervisor and the student. So the three people involved here get together twice, once at the beginning of the semester and once at the end of the semester. At the beginning, they're just basically formulating the goals of the intern, exactly what they're working on, laying that out. Everyone agrees and signs off on the required documentation. And then at the end of the semester, they get back together to evaluate how well that intern met those goals. The faculty mentor assigns a letter grade, and the faculty mentor is paid through this class process at 0.227 LHE per student. Typically, we see one student in a section, but depending on the department or what's happening, there could be more than one in a section. But normally it's just one. The supervisor piece. The supervisor piece, they're the person who oversees the day-to-day responsibilities of the student. They are the ones that are also initiating the onboarding process that Holly discussed on the slide previously. So if it's an external component, the supervisor will not be a member of MiraCosta. They will be, a business representative outside of MiraCosta, and they will have to complete the contract that Viviana that referenced earlier. This supervisor will train the student, so that does not fall onto the faculty mentor. It's the supervisor's job to train the student and ensure that they know what they need to do to complete their job tasks. They evaluate the student job performance at the end of the semester. The supervisor also would be attending the site visits. They confirm all the hours worked throughout the internship. The student will report their hours in the Canvas class, but the supervisor will have to confirm all those at the end. So it's important that that documentation is tracked. They're paid through MiraCosta, so it's pretty easy to find that on their pay stub. But again, we pay a little bit late, right? They'll get paid a month behind, so that will need to be documented. And then it's important to note that the supervisor is not paid for their responsibilities and roles within the class itself. And I will turn it back over to Nina.
Thank you, Mike. So we have created what we call a LAEP supervisor checklist, which kind of takes you through the steps as a supervisor of a LAEP student. So I'll just kind of reiterate what we talked about already, which is securing approval for your LAEP project with your supervisor or dean, getting department buy-in about covering that small cost, less than 1%. Think about what those student learning outcomes are, create that job description and post it on Jane, open the recruitment and academic goals that are aligned with your research project. Have the candidates determine their eligibility by going to that LAEP interest form. Initiate the workday request for the interns that you end up selecting. Support that student through the onboarding process. Make sure that they complete the internship reporting process and enroll in the internship class, which comes through Mike, and then work with the internship faculty mentor and the student through the course. I do want to just say one thing that LAEP is not, and that is a way to pay your student workers more. That's not what this is. It's a very specific, but the most important part, if you just kind of break down the name, it is about learning alignment and making sure that the work that the student's doing on the research project is specific to where they're headed with their academic goals, but also toward employment with the external partners. Obviously, not every student who's a LAEP intern at MiraCosta can be employed by the college, but you want students that have a pathway or a stepping stone toward what their ultimate employment goals are. So that's a little bit about the program. Please reach out to any of us at the Career Center, Financial Aid, or Human Resources if you have questions.